Welcome back to another episode of the Ethereum Classic Show. The immutable fortress, the Emerald City, where the law of the land is code and the grass is always greener. Today we've got Shane Jonas with us straight from Sydney. He's now landed, he's rested and ready for action. How was it, man?
It was good, actually. I had a really good time.
I imagine. Was that your first time in Sydney?
Yeah, first time. Great city. Reminds me of like a really big Vancouver, kind of. So
Big Vancouver.
yeah.
This I do not, but I'm looking forward to ETC Summit. That's going to be in Vancouver.
Yeah, me too. That'll be really good. Get everybody together.
What was the general reception of the ETC's presentations at EdCon?
Yeah, I think that they went really well. Like pretty receptive. Everyone sees like the benefit of how like all of our projects help like just EVM and JSON RPC like as a whole. So just moving tech forward, basically everyone sees that we're making good strides.
Yeah, and for everyone's edification, Shane is one of the lead developers for the tooling on ETC, and one of the main developers behind Open-RPC in collaboration with Zach Belford. As I start learning about blockchain, I learned about JSON RPC and the role it plays in blockchain. So if you could quantify, its participation, its role in blockchain, how important is RPC?
Yeah, so like all of the dApps and all of the wallets that we have today are all interacting with the blockchain via RPC or via JSON RPC. So there's a lot of like incompatibilities, and it's unclear like what clients have what JSON RPC methods. So yeah, that's where Open-RPC comes in. Yeah.
So every blockchain, pretty much virtually every blockchain uses JSON RPC in some way or form, or shape or form.
Yeah, I would say like 90% of them. There are some that don't, but everything that's derived from like Bitcoin, Ethereum Classic, all of those and their derivatives are all using JSON RPC. So that's about 90% of them probably.
And so that means Open-RPC it's not ETC specific. This is something that all blockchains can use.
Yeah, exactly. So we actually have an ECIP up already, and we also made an EIP to Ethereum and a BIP to Bitcoin as well, so that hopefully like the whole ecosystem can benefit from Open-RPC. Yeah,
and it feels like this kind of work builds on top of chain interoperability. Is that a safe assessment?
Yeah, I think the interoperability and just being able to even test within chains like parity versus Geth. There's a lot of interoperability issues even within clients. So being able to describe a JSON API with Open-RPC just lets you have like better automated tooling, better tests, better documentation for all of these clients.
How has the reception been so far as dApps using Open-RPC, adoption of the framework?
Yeah, so as of now, I think you you talk to the Ethernode guys, those guys are using ENOS already. But we also have a branch of multi-geth in the works, so that's something to look out for. And the vision there is that for multi-geth, you'll be able to basically ask it what capabilities it has, and it'll let you know exactly what methods it has and what return values are there, and that lets you build tooling and interfaces and clients and all kinds of stuff on top of that. So that's basically the vision there once I get that into multi-geth.
Yeah, and now that so that's connected to an ECIP you've issued.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and then what would need to happen on like the EIP side or the BIP side for that to be implemented?
For the EIP stuff, I think just a lot more communication and outreach there, probably. And for the Bitcoin stuff, I think they want a more solid proposal around like the entirety of what an Open-RPC document would look like for Bitcoin. In Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, the EIP and ECIP process is a bit more has a bit more room for like meta specifications like Open-RPC, whereas apparently in Bitcoin it's not so meta. That's it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know that they're very hesitant to do any changes. They need to be looked at for a long time.
But the reception over there was actually pretty good. We got a lot of great comments from the developers there that said they really liked it.
On the BIP side, you're saying?
Yep.
Okay, so I mean, this really goes hand in hand with a lot of the things that Terry has been saying. Terry Culver, the CEO of ETC Labs, where this focus of chain interoperability. And also, how we grow in tandem with Ethereum. So hearing that the reception from other chains has been positive is exactly what we want. And do you think there's challenges related to chain-specific teams working on these kind of initiatives? Do you think there's pushback? It came from ETC Labs or ETC, hence we won't use it. Do you see that, or it's not the case?
No, not at all. I think everyone's very receptive, and there's nothing like that at all.
So what's next for the Open-RPC framework for the spec? What do you see, 2.0 coming out toward looking like?
Well, hopefully there's never a 2.0, because we want to keep the spec very stable. So ideally, not a lot of changes that would lead to a 2.0. But like, what do we want to? What's coming next is we definitely want a lot more language support for our generator clients. We have TypeScript, Rust, and JavaScript right now. And just like incremental improvements for the tooling.
Incremental changes for the tooling.
Yeah, just making things better, a bit more usable, and we have we also have a couple more tooling in mind, like server generators and skeletons, that kind of stuff. So we have a lot of ideas for tools, but yeah.
Okay, so at this point, stability is our number one goal. It seems like the next thing would be adoption, right? Getting as many.
So doing the talk in Sydney was great. And I think in the next couple months, we'll have a couple more coming up, and ETC Summit is actually coming up real soon as well. So yeah, that'll help adoption. I've also talked to some startups that are interested in using it as an alternative to Swagger, mostly because of how it's transport agnostic. So if you're using Swagger or Open-API right now, and say you need it's REST only, and if you need to use WebSockets, then you kind of run into a dead end there. So this provides a way for them to use the same API across different transport layers.
Okay, and it sounds like the more people that adopt it, the more imperative it is for somebody to adopt it.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think that the industry just needs like a common format to describe these JSON RPC APIs, and this is it. I think there's been some attempts in the past, but we're just building on the shoulders of giants here with Swagger and Open-API, and it really shows in all the tooling that's come out of it so far.
Is there any argument to implementing Open-RPC if you use JSON RPC? Other than being wanting to have to go through.
Yeah, I think like if it's like a single maintainer project and maybe you don't plan to open source it at all, and it's just maybe embedded within a system, you might not need that, right? But in our case, for multi-geth and for a lot of our projects, we're going to need like top-notch documentation, and we don't want to have to maintain we don't have to maintain JSON RPC clients. That was one of the big issues we had previously building a lot of the tools for the Emerald SDK, like Emerald.js, which is just hard code RPC, like it's just hundreds and hundreds of lines of code, of repeated lines of code that just doesn't need to exist. So that was one of the big motivations for something like this, and especially all the existing Geth JSON RPC documentation is also really outdated. That's another big motivation for getting this stuff together. So I think everyone realizes that, and hopefully we can all come together towards this common industry format, right?
Yeah, and I think as a team, I definitely have to spread the word as much as possible. I think interviews like this, discussion articles, help get us there. I know Mache was raving about it. How he loves the playground, how the documentation is seamlessly put together. I was asking him, well, why not RESTful? Like, why don't you like RESTful APIs? And it was just like, because they're shit, and that's it.
I think the big thing there is the transport agnostic. Like you can use WebSockets, you can use HTTP, you can use IPC, basically anything that you could possibly think of, you can use it as a transport. But I think you hit on a good point there, which was like the Ethernode guys like really kind of got it that in order to like consume an API, you need to know how it works, right? And Open-RPC and a specification and format like this allows you to do that really easily. And it's just been like a big missing piece for JSON RPC. It's the big gap there.
So outside of it's a huge undertaking, and I know that you and Zach were working for a long time on Open-RPC. In switching gears now and looking at ETC, the world of ETC.
Yeah.
What's what's next on the horizon for the tooling team? What are you excited about?
Yeah, so like I said before, multi-geth. I really want to get this stuff into multi-geth so we can generate clients and all kinds of tooling to be able to use for the Ethereum Classic network. So that's coming up. The other thing we have on the roadmap for the tooling side for ETC is Service Runner. And the idea there is to just help blur the service provider and user use case of the blockchain. So for example, like we don't want people to use a centralized service like Infura, right? We want users to be their own service providers. So this will be a tool to help blur that gap.
And is there an ECIP for this, or where does this fall into?
It's not an ECIP. I don't know if it falls in that. It's more of a tool to help you run the blockchain, basically.
Okay.
So I don't think that falls within that particular ECIP, but it could be a proposal somewhere else, maybe. But the idea there is we want people to be able to run their full nodes, but also there's other things that they need to run too. Like maybe if your dApp requires IPFS, or if it requires BitTorrent or other services, like dApps are getting a bit more complex now in that it's not just running the blockchain, right? You might have another place to store your data and another place to send messages around, like Whisper, for example.
Yeah.
Right?
Now this sounds like a tool that's, I mean, could this be hypothetically also chain agnostic? Is this something that Ethereum could use?
Yeah, exactly. I think even Bitcoin as well. So yeah, I think the focus here is to build tools that level up the entire ecosystem, right?
Yeah, and I think a secondary responsibility we have is then championing these and sharing them with the community so that they get used across the ecosystem, because the more people that are using it, the stronger they get, faster development is.
Yeah, exactly. The stronger the tools get, the better our tooling gets for free, right? So the more people that use it, the better.
Now, what can both devs and non-devs, like I think of like ETC, we've got this good group of people who are devoted to ETC from a community standpoint, and then we have people who are devoted from a technical standpoint. What can these two groups do to kind of help that adoption of these tools we're building that are chain agnostic?
Yeah, I think the development side, there's lots of different chains using lots of different tools, and I don't think we should have any that sort of tribalism on the developer side, but on the marketing side, we obviously need to differentiate ourselves from other chains. So
yeah, I agree with that. I also see that what we're building isn't chain specific, right? So
exactly.
there's this combination of, we want to build things that help the entire ecosystem. At the same time, we do have a chain we're championing, being Ethereum Classic.
Yeah, and I think the great thing there is that if some of these other chains don't adopt any of the tooling, then they're just going to lag behind. It's such fundamental building blocks that if it's not picked up, then yeah, like I said, they will be lagging behind for sure.
And do you think this focus on building blocks, I mean, how long have you been have you been developing blockchain related software?
Just a bit over 2 years probably, and just messing around with smart contracts a lot before that as well. So yeah, been around for a while.
Yeah,
Sure.
for sure. And I mean, it seems that now, recently, this focus on building blocks has come into play. So there must have been some sort of experience, or what do you think's happening that's shifted that gear for you?
Yeah, so I think just a lot of frustration around out-of-date clients, not up-to-date documentation, like very poor developer experience. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put the tooling stuff they're working on is like developer user experience. Like this is the stuff that if you provide a great, first onboard experience to a developer, then they're going to keep coming back, right?
Well, it makes sense. You want to have a low barrier to entry. If people are learning something new, if you make it difficult, you're disincentivizing people.
Exactly.
I've also noticed it with me trying to spin up my node. I got that running finally. And I learned through doing that also, how valuable the tools the Ethernode guys have put together are. Because even though it seems straightforward from somebody who's been updating a GitHub every day, somebody who's a new user, it isn't. I was lucky to also have help from Mache and Aaron and Eric. But yeah, you're 100% right.
Yeah, that's been a big focus for us is being able to provide like a documentation driven approach, not only with Open-RPC, but a lot of our other repos, like Pristine is a good one on ETC Labs Core. What that is basically a template for new repositories in the open source space that provides the kind of documentation that you're talking about, like how to open, how to read, how to new pull, how to actually contribute to open source in a meaningful way. So we use that as the basis for all of our repos so that everyone can at least have somewhere to go look to figure out how to contribute, right?
And that's Pristine, you're saying?
Yeah, that's Pristine, and like I said, all of our repos are based on that. So if you go to any of our repos, you'd be able to figure out how to contribute to any of them. Yeah.
Excellent. I guess I need to get more acquainted with Pristine then.
Yeah, it's great. We got a lot of really positive feedback there from just the ETC community.
Now, I wanted to touch, before we sign off, I wanted to touch on something you mentioned before, which is, we do need to differentiate ETC, right? Where do you kind of see that? Where do you see us today as being differentiated? What's the vision for, for the team moving forward?
Yeah, I think for ETC, we're not going anywhere. We're in it for the long haul, and everyone in the community believes proof of work is how blockchains should be secured, and I don't think I think that's our big differentiator moving forward, and I think it's a big one, being the only the only immutable proof of work blockchain with smart contracts. I think is a really big differentiator.
Yeah, I that's been my go-to in helping people understand. A lot of people don't realize that Ethereum Classic is committed to proof of work, committed to a fixed supply. So those are the things that I think are very powerful places to talk. At the same time, differentiating ourselves from on the smart contract side. I'm learning more about what our plans are for the compiler, interpreter. I think that's also going to be a place of differentiation.
Yeah, I think all of the stuff that we have coming down the pipe is promoting that the reuse, don't reinvent kind of motto, where let's reuse JSON RPC. Like, we don't have to use gRPC or GraphQL or any of these other ones. Let's reuse the existing JSON RPC. It's going to be there forever, right? Same with Sputnik VM. Let's use the existing EVM structure. And yeah, we have some plans for Sputnik VM integration with LLVM. So that's also, keeping that same line of thinking, like, let's reuse the current EVM, right? Like, that will, both of those sides get us really great tooling.
It's almost like all of the responses are very measured and well thought out. It's like, we really need to build the foundational layer first. We should be reusing things we've thought about a lot rather than coming up with new ideas for stuff. We should build tools that everyone can use, that that lead to interoperability, that lead to faster development. Everything just kind of seems very rational. I'm not. I don't think everybody's used to that in the blockchain sphere, where every claim kind of isn't, really pushing the boundary.
Yeah, just trying to build great tooling for the existing chain, right?
Yeah, build great things so great people can build great things. I forget, there was a good quote I think Zach had.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good one.
When we first launched Open-RPC. Okay, Shane, this has been great. I think we've got a good understanding of the motivation behind Open-RPC, what to look forward to in tooling. Is there anything you want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, check out Open-RPC on GitHub and figure out a way to contribute.
Yeah, and I'm sure if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to you on Discord. You or Zach.
Yeah, exactly. Hanging out.
Excellent. And
an open channel. Check us out.
Sorry, you had cut off there. So yes, there's a committed channel for Open-RPC. I'll also include a link to Pristine. I just, I also want to get more acquainted with it. And next week, we're going to be interviewing Jake Lang, who is also working on the JIT compiler, as well as some other projects with the Ethereum Foundation. So, Shane, thank you. Thank you for your time.
All right, sure.
And yeah, talk to you soon. And everybody else, have a great week. Bye.